Whenever you hear the words, "Here Comes the Sun," most people will immediately think of the Beatles. They'll immediately think of the classic song, and they are very much in the right. But here in 2015, "Here Comes the Sun" now has taken on a different meaning, because the band Klone has opted to use this as the title of their new record, and this very unique band has a lot to offer the world, and they are kind of hidden and masked from view more often than not, even though just a couple of short years ago, one of their albums was highly regarded to the point of being on a lot of people's tongues near the end of its calendar year back in 2010, really being a contender for one of the better albums of that year. So Here Comes the Sun and the band Klone. I mean, what can we really say about these guys? These guys are a progressive rock band, if you really want to call them that. I'm really somewhat leaning more toward the idea of progressive alternative or prog-ternative, but they don't do this in the same way as a band like Coheed and Cambria that kind of bridges the gap by being a little bit too technical for the alternative side of things, but maybe just not quite progressive enough to fully be immersed in that idea. Klone is definitely more than immersed within the progressive side. However, they have a very different approach to it. They have an approach that reminds me a lot more of alternative music and the way in which it's represented. And Here Comes the Sun is certainly not that much of an exception. However, it leans a little bit more toward that prog side. This is a really tough one, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why I think I really enjoy these guys so much, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people would as well if they simply knew who they were. This is an album that really is able to blend the gap between not being that in-your-face, over-the-top, 10,000 notes per minute, that traditional idea of progressive music where it's just a bunch of people that are jacking off on their instruments and essentially showcasing to the world, look how fucking good I am. This is not what this record, this is not what this band is all about whatsoever. They're about the overall craftability of the tracks. They're about good songwriting. They're about simpler songwriting, but songwriting that also has an impact. Think of a band such as Anathema, only instead of having that more romantic pull that they have had lately, think of one that's a little bit more, less wishy-washy in that regard, because that's beautiful music that has just a lot of great things to offer, but it's very, very different topically whenever it comes to lyricism and even overall construction. But think about the same vein. Think of what would happen if Anathema's current material was a lot heavier, that had a little bit more of a bite to it, and you would kind of get a little rough estimation of what Klone's all about. This is a group that's able to really get you going and actually is able to include a tertiary element to their music that actually is probably the icing on the cake, the cherry on top of the sundae, the thing that makes them absolutely excellent. They throw in a little bit of psychedelic rock, they throw in a little bit of that stoner element that a lot of people really tend to respect, and they do so not in every track, but they sprinkle it on one or two, and it just immediately escalates it to somewhat magnificent and magical levels. And the song that I'm thinking about specifically on this album is Grim Dance. Grim Dance really has that element. Reminds me of Immaculate Desire from the album from 2010, from Black Days, and it's just an absolutely hypnotic track. It's one that catches you off guard and just kind of takes you through this journey and does not stop until it's done with you. The same can also be true about The Last Experience, which is a 7-minute long track near the finale of this album. And it's one where the time does not feel wasted whatsoever. It's one where the inner hypnosis that you garner from these gentlemen is really based around their songwriting, the way in which it feels very, very tight and has an exceptional bite to it that is one of a kind. The first portion of this album is very, very well executed and actually showcases that prog side a little bit more than just the straight-up rock side. This is one where the soft vocals that you hear every so often, it's more of a mid-register throughout the majority of it, really kind of hit you in a nice way, and the mixture and the overall pleasing tone of the voice certainly gives these guys a very good reputation. It's definitely a great trait to possess. But finally, I have to talk about Summertime. I have to talk about the very last track on this 50-plus minute long album, principally because I like last tracks. They give a band the ability to try something completely different, to try something a little bit new, either that or to catch you off guard. And they certainly do that with Summertime, because throughout the majority of this album, you are getting the basics of musicality as far as a metal band is concerned. You're getting some of your guitars, your bass, your drums, etc., your voice. And then on Summertime, they just bust out what sounds like a saxophone. And it's something that is the dominant force among this track. It's the dominant instrument that you hear. And it's something that's just so strange, and the way in which this is being played will remind you very, very much of a European style, and it's very, very well done. It's very, very well tailored. It's a nice surprise. It's something that's pulled off magically. You could easily see this incorporation being used in their future songs to perfection, and really being something that elevates them to an even bigger mysterious status where they become somewhat of a legend in that regard. Man, oh man. I was really surprised with Here Comes the Sun, principally because Klone's a band that still hasn't really taken off whenever it comes to who knows them and who does not. But this is a group that is still consistently delivering really strong material. They remind me of Beardfish in that regard. Beardfish is starting to pick up a little bit more in the way of reputation, but Klone needs that same love to really come their way, because they're an exceptionally talented bunch of guys. I'm very impressed with this disc, and I think that a lot of you would be very impressed with it. In fact, I'm going to ask you, what did you think about this record? What did you think about Here Comes the Sun? Your cup of tea, or is this something where you prefer the coffee instead? Let me know in the comments below, because I myself found this to be an 87 out of 100 album. I love the way this thing flowed so seamlessly, and I like the fact that it kept hitting me with a couple of different surprises here and there. Unlike the Byzantine album, nothing on this disc really feels wasted. Everything feels like it's right in the same league. You get to a track like Grim Dance, which is just going to be like a preferential favorite of mine, but that didn't. It wasn't a track that was overshadowing the other 9 that were on the disc. It was instead one that was magnifying the overall body of work that's presented here. But what did you guys think of it? What did you think about Here Comes the Sun? And what should we talk about in the future here on this channel? Let me know in the comments below. Highly recommend this disc, so definitely check these guys out. Give them some love. Share this video around so your friends can give this band some love. Let's make this group bigger than they already are, because they deserve it.